What is good, YouTube? And today we're just going to be talking all about thresholds and what you should be farming in relation to progressing your account. Now, as you guys know, there are 3 thresholds in the game. They all drop different matrices and different pieces. And we're just going to be talking about which one you should be farming when you are progressing through the game and when you want to farm them. Because looking at the comments section, it seems like there's a lot of people actually that don't know what to farm still. So I just wanted to make this video to help you guys out so you guys can actually be more efficient and get to the late game even quicker. So there's 3 thresholds. Let's actually start with Terrormaton first. So Terrormaton actually drops 5 matrices. You get Kenai, which is a DPS matrix. You get Onslaught, which is another DPS matrix. And you get 3 other ones, which are more supporty. Battle Will, which is going to be for some DPS. You can probably ignore this completely because it's very niche. You have Wellspring, which boosts your HP. And you have Cure, which is going to be for basically just healers, right? Because it boosts your healing effect. So basically, when you're progressing through the game, Terrormaton straight up is like the worst threshold to farm exclusively, because you're not going to really get too much benefit out of farming this because of the fact that the best modules that drop from here are going to be like Kenai and like Onslaught somewhat. The Cure matrix is very good, and same with Wellspring, but these you only need like 1 set of. And honestly, you probably only need like 1 or 2 sets of Onslaught and Kenai. I think like having 1 set of good Kenai gear, 1 set of good Onslaught gear, and like 1 set of good Wellspring and 1 set of good Cure is good enough. Afterwards, you don't really need to farm it that much. And that's because there's only really ever going to be 1 character at a time that is using these matrices. Because unequipping gear in this game is actually free and you can move your gear around, you also can set these formations and like gear sets, which makes moving gear very easy. You don't really need multiple sets of these pieces. Of course, later on in the game, you might want to farm extra ones if you're running like double DPS one-shot comps. But early on into the game, you're not going to really want to farm this too much. You just want to get like 1 set of good Kenai gear and like 1 set of good Onslaught and probably just get out. The other 3, yes, you will want later on, but for the most part, you only need these 2 for the early game to just equip on stuff like your Diting, your Lilium and stuff like that. And if you're using like Revelation users like Yeli or Rosa or even Giada, Onslaught will be very good for them. Whatever damage dealer you're using, just farm the appropriate module matrix set for them, and you'll be good to go. And after that, you can pretty much ignore Terrormaton for a long time until you unlock Inferno, where you'll want to come back in here to get good Fury Edge piece to actually, activate this and get even more damage for your DPS. So Terrormaton is like a threshold where you don't want to farm too much and spend too much time on, because even though some characters really use these well, like Wellspring's actually very good on Sonya, it's good on Fushu, it's good on Valerian, you're never really going to use those characters together in the same team really. So you can just farm like 1 set of this later on and you'll be good to go. And because those are all supports, you don't really need a great Wellspring set to make it work on them, right? Same thing with Cure, right? You only need like 1 or 2 of these like active sets to activate this 8 matrix effect, because you're only ever running 1, maybe 2 healers on the team, and you really only need like 1 Cure character. Like if you have 2 healers, having Cure on just 1 of them is usually good enough. So Terrormaton is basically like a pit stop in the early game. You can think about it like that, where you're gonna farm here like a lot in Hell 3 for a bit to get good Onslaught and Kenai gear, and then after that, you're gonna pretty much move on. And when you're farming for your DPS gear, you don't really have to worry about the substats too much. For example, this is one of the pieces I have on my Lilium, which I'm using in my one-shot comps. You can see that it's terrible, right? I only have 1 roll into attack bonus, and I'm not like spending eternities in Terrormaton farming a better piece, because a lot of the benefit will come from the main stat and just activating the matrix. So it's a very short pit stop just to get good DPS gear. The main focus that you're going to want to do is, especially if you're in the early and mid game, is going to be DokiDoki. So a lot of people know this if you've played other games where speed is the name of the game, but DokiDoki is going to be really good because a lot of the bosses in this game are just going to be speed checks. Yes, you want a good damage set, which you'll be getting from Terrormaton, like I said, just the pit stop and get 1 good damage loadout. But for the most part, a lot of your PvE characters are going to be on Swift Rush. For example, if we look at very commonly used PvE units, Klaus definitely wants to be on 12 Swift Rush. Ling Luo wants to be on 12 Swift Rush. If you're using Sonya, wants to be on 12 Swift Rush. Viper wants to be on 12 Swift Rush. Kazuya wants to be on 12 Swift Rush. Nell wants to be on 12 Swift Rush. If you're using Lily, it's the same thing for her. So you kind of get what I'm saying. A lot of supports, pretty much every single one in the game for PvE content, wants to be on 12 Swift Rush, except for a select few. So because of that, it's like the main reason why you want to spam DokiDoki. And on top of that, you also get access to Time Weave. Now Time Weave, in my opinion, is one of the most broken matrices in the game for PvE content. If you actually run a 12 Time Weave set, this is just super broken, especially when you pair it with a 12 Swift Rush. So you can actually run these two together, and they synergize very well because Swift Rush gives you a ton of speed, and then Time Weave will give you the chance to reduce the cooldown of all your skills when you start your turn. So for example, if I look at like one of my characters here, I think Viper, which I was farming Aurora with earlier, you can see he's running a 12 Swift Rush and 12 Time Weave build. And this is going to be possible if you run 3-3-3, 3-3-3, and then you run a shell with 3 and 3. And this is just really good because if you think about it, you're cycling very fast, and when you're cycling very fast, you'll have more chances to reduce the cooldowns. So you can pretty much run this on every single support in the game, especially in the early and mid game where you're not really worried about, the specialized cores. And even though you're not utilizing the effect accuracy, you can use this on a ton of healers as well. And this will just reduce your cooldowns and cycle fast, and you'll be able to just get a lot of abilities off. A lot of supports, all of their power is in their S3 and their S2, so they synergize very well together. So it makes DokiDoki kind of like the best area to farm early and mid game for your supports, mainly because of the fact that these two matrices drop. Now the other three matrices, Unbreakable, Bramble, and Harvest, they're not as good, nearly as good honestly. Harvest isn't going to really be relevant for the most part. You can use it in some one-shot comps, but the damage that you get from it isn't going to be as good as something that you get from Aurora, which we'll talk about. And Bramble and Unbreakable are mostly going to be strictly for PvP, and even so, they're not going to be, that highly coveted most of the time, so you don't actually need to farm it that much. So you're mostly here for these two to progress through PvE content. And you guys probably know that, but how long should you actually farm here? So I would personally say until you actually have Inferno for all the thresholds on farm, and until you have Inferno for, oh my god, my mouse is like bugging out, Inferno for Nico Nana, Sharon, and Shadowflame Hoyan also on farm, I would say you should be farming pretty much exclusively DokiDoki with some pit stops in Terrormaton for your DPS gear, like I said, like Keen Eye gear and stuff like that, and also Aurora, which we'll talk about after we talk about DokiDoki. This is going to be the threshold which will give you the best PvE gear in the game, and if you're struggling to progress, you're just going to want to farm DokiDoki until you have 12 Swift Rush and 12 Time Weave on a majority of your characters and like 250 speed plus. That way you'll make it so that you can just go through all the content pretty easily, and you'll be able to actually just get into other farming. Of course, you're going to want to farm here on Inferno as well, because the two specialized cores that drop are both very good for PvE. Evil Guard is going to be extremely good. It stacks with Cure, so you get 37% extra healing if you pair them together. And then you can run your healer on 12 Swift Rush as well. And Swift Raid is going to be very good to boost your speed even further on certain characters like Lily or Nell, or even like Kazuyo, the Reverie for Inferno DokiDoki, to actually have higher speed, because this also stacks with Swift Rush. So because of that, you're definitely going to want to stop in DokiDoki for a while and just farm it for a bit, even though you're not going to be able to farm a lot of good PvP sets, because this is going to be the basis for your PvE teams here. Now let's talk about Aurora. So Aurora is mostly going to be centered for PvP. There's going to be two DPS matrices that drop. That's going to be Momentum and Fury. These are only for PvE mostly, and these are very good as well. Similar to Terrormaton, you're going to want a pit stop here for certain characters that want these. If you're looking to one-shot DokiDoki and you're using, Romoka, Momentum is very, very good here. If you're using something like a Rosa that has a lot of debuffs, Momentum's also very good as well. Basically, if you have any teams that you're able to put 4 debuffs or more on the boss consistently, then you will want to run Momentum on your DPS and pit stop here to get good pieces. However, Momentum is definitely not necessary, so you don't have to stop here and get these. The one you're going to want to pit stop for is Fury. And Fury is the best 8 matrix for DPS in the game. It beats out Battle Will and Harvest by a large margin. So you will want to stop here in like Hell 3 to actually start getting these Fury pieces. Now, the best part about Fury actually is going to be that you can run Fury on 1 2 matrix piece and 1 3 matrix piece. And the reason is because you just get that 3 matrix from your shell and you're at 8 right away. So you don't have to run 2 3 matrix pieces, obviously, because it's 8, it's an even number. So it makes it so that pit stopping in Aurora and getting your Fury piece will be very, very quick. So you just want to pit stop here, you know, probably before you go into like DokiDoki Hell 4 and Inferno and get your Fury piece, and that way you can actually, you know, gear up your DPS and do more damage. You will want to start farming Aurora, however, once you start beating all the PvE content. So once you start beating like all the 3 thresholds on Inferno, and then once you start beating Nico Nana, Sharon, and Shadowflame Hoyan, you're going to want to start transitioning into Aurora. And you're probably wondering, what about Rengokutsu? Well, if you're unable to beat Rengokutsu after farming DokiDoki, Aurora will allow you to cheese it very, very easily through the set, the matrix set known as Bloodbath. So these 3 matrices on the right, the blue ones and the yellow ones, Strive, Bulwark, and Bloodbath, they're all going to be for PvP primarily, and they're very, very good in the current meta. But Bloodbath is also going to be insane for PvE content. Basically, any stage where you find that you're dying too easily. For example, a good example would be something like Rengokutsu, like I said, or in this month's Ethernet rally, a lot of people are actually struggling with Kururu, right? Where is Kururu? If I go down here, I think he'll be somewhere here. A lot of people are struggling with this guy because I can't like show you, but he's like one-shotting people's teams. And what I did is just ran all my characters on Bloodbath. Bloodbath is just by nature like a super broken set, because basically it just makes you take 55% less damage. That's the best way to just think of it. So you can't get one shot anymore, it just cheeses a lot of stages like Ember Check and stuff like that. So once you start getting to late game content, Bloodbath will be extremely, extremely, extremely good. On top of that, like I said, these are also going to be very good PvP modules. Bloodbath is pretty much on every single bruiser in PvP right now, which is very, very annoying, but it's a separate topic. Bulwark is going to be very good on a lot of characters as well, and Strive is going to be commonly used on characters as well. So basically a good way to look at it is Aurora has just no bad matrices, but the thing is, none of them will really progress you through PvE as much as DokiDoki's will. And it's mostly going to be a PvP, you know, farming threshold, like I said. If I literally look at my PvP loadouts, you'll see a lot of my characters are on Bloodbath. Some of them are on Swift Rush still, which is going to be good because you'll be able to use your PvE DokiDoki pieces for PvP content still. But for the most part, you're going to see a lot of the modules that I have is going to be from Aurora, and that's mostly because of Bloodbath, right? It's just really broken. Bulwark is also very broken against controllers, so for the most part, you're going to be spending a lot of time farming here after you beat PvE content. But yeah, I think once you start getting through everything and start tackling the hardest boss in the game, which is going to be Rengokutsu, then you can actually pit stop for Aurora and stop farming your DokiDoki, because this is the area of content where if you just don't have really good characters built up, like Lily and stuff like that, you didn't get lucky, you will have to resort to like kind of like cheesing it. And cheese is kind of similar to what I was talking about with Bloodbath. I don't know if any people are using it. Surely there's someone. Yeah, see, this guy's using Bloodbath on his Vice. You can use it on like multiple characters as well. There's like a lot of cheesy strategies you can use with Bloodbath to actually have consistent runs here. So if you're struggling with Rengokutsu, you can pit stop in Aurora and just, you know, get more Bloodbath pieces to start clearing it. But for the most part, it's going to be a PvP threshold boss. So yeah, just want to talk about the thresholds very quickly. I kind of went over it, you know, very, very quickly, so I kind of generalized it. But just to summarize, you know, basically for PvE content in general, DokiDoki is going to be the best because, like I mentioned earlier, running your characters on 3 Swift Rush, 3 Time Weave will solve everything pretty much as long as they're fast enough. And you're going to want to pit stop in Terrormaton early on for Kenai and Onslaught pieces for your DPS, depending on what they like to use. And then Aurora is mostly going to be just in the super late game with a short pit stop in Hell 3 for the Fury Matrix, because it is very, very good for every DPS. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if this helped you out. Even if it didn't and you guys already knew this because you guys have been playing the game for a while and are more experienced, hit it anyways so I can get some support, and I'll see you guys next video.